I believe, I think this module part C has also been completed. The agenda, okay. The different perspectives and views we have covered. So going to module 2, I think still module 8. Okay, going to Workday Studio assemblies. So what are Workday assemblies? Assemblies provide a unified environment for all the core functions of Workday integration, like quotation, routing, transformation, error handling. This functionality is provided in the form of an individual component that are connected or wired together to form processing chains. You have complete freedom in how you choose to wire these chain components together. To open the assembly diagram, expand the project in the project explorer and double click on the assembly to open it in the workspace. Yes, that we have already seen. The assembly diagram consists of components and connection. Components are wired together with connections which drive the message flow through the assembly. Like in the direction you have connected, workflow or the message flow will happen in the same direction. Like from, say, you have connected from start here to log, or from log you have connected to stay hello or say hello. Then after starting or initiating the integration, it will go and write a log on the log here component, and then it will do the processing or call the processing for say hello. Again, components of an assembly transport. So the assembly runtime supports several transports. There are two in transport components, Workday in and local in. In transport components receive messages from a Workday local resource. There are multiple out transport components that can send messages to a source. For example, HTTP, email, custom, and so on. Transports can operate in request only or request response mode. I'll show you what they are talking about. I think we briefly go. So these are the components which we have already talked about. And say you want to add any kind of sync mediation or sync mediation again in the middle. Okay. Now it has not been connected, but has been added to your assembly. So what we call as wired. We have not wired this component together in the assembly flow. What I'll do is like break the original flow. I will take this arrow coming out of this existing, point it to the new sync mediation. Okay. And from there, I'll connect the say hello component in here, and that component can be wired to the assembly or an existing component. And in terms of the in or out transport, so under the palette, we have different sections, as I told you, based upon the type of processing they are doing. They have been categorized into almost 10 to 12 categories. So within which there are two categories for transportation. One is Workday in and the other is local in. So what Workday in does is like it creates the first component where you can start your assembly, which is the start here component. And then there are local in. What local in does is like if you want to call, say this is a processing, I want to have an accessibility transformation. So I will say like local in will go in here. Okay. And I again have some kind of async mediation after it. Okay. And within this async mediation, I am doing something like just believe this is where I'm writing a log of the accessibility or XML. And I go into the local in for this. I change it. So now in place of this, before saying hello, I want to process the accessibility. What I'll do is like I will add a local out, which will then in turn get connected. Be accessibility. You see, as soon as I declared the local in and saved my assembly, so while I'm configuring the local out, it is now showing this to be selected as an endpoint. So what I'll do is like use this and save, and this error will be gone. And now how the flow will happen is like it will start in here, it will do the processing in to these components in the sync mediation. And from there it says local out. So What I'll do is like if I'll go here and click on, say it's a very small assembly, so you'll be able to find it. But if you want to, if it's like a larger assembly, it has a lot of components like one after another, and you have to scroll up or down for a larger area. Then what you do is like right click on the local out. Okay, right click on the local out, and there is a option called as declaration in work. It will take you to the declaration in workspace. So in terms of what kind of component is it calling, so it directly, as soon as I click on declaration on work, the pointer directly goes to the process accessibility. So now it will see that after this call has been done, this kind of process is happening. And once this process is completed, it will come back again to this and move it to the next wired component. So that's what a local in and out. So this is doing a local out, that is within the assembly, it is going out to a different sub-assembly or a different kind of process to be done. And once this process has been completed, it will come back to the local out and move to the next. Okay, so these.
So how does the system know it's going to that particular local in? Because we may have multiple local ins.
We have. I showed you, right? While configuring the local out, I had this option to configure the local endpoint. So as soon as I saved the local in first, so first I need to save the local in. Okay, declare that assembly. Even if say I don't want to do any processing or anything, but I want to go make the flow to go in here. So what I'll do is like make this and maybe add a mediation or the next step just for the sake of it, and configure. To configure this, I'll save, and as soon as I configure the local out, it will ask me to otherwise say if this is not there, right, it will error out. You will start having errors. You see the red dot on the logo.
But why do we need that? We can put that XSLT inside here itself, right?
No, so we need this because say this is a very basic or simple XSLT. So there are XSL or assemblies. This is a very basic or simple assembly, I would say, not XSLT. And if there are like 15, 20 components, so it does not really look nice to like have all aligned in one row and there's nothing. It's not very readable for your
simplify and readable.
Right. So what we do is like break into smaller subsections of what we call sub-assemblies. That helps us to identify, and maybe even troubleshooting is really easy. So what we do is like usually break the assemblies in terms of its processing. So initially we will have the main assembly. So this will be the main assembly where start here would be there, and this assembly will be declaring all the variables and everything on the first step in the first basic. That's the usual flow I'm talking about, okay? And then there would be another local out that would be doing a processing, okay? And then after the processing, and that will go to a local in a different subassembly. And after that, what happens is like once the processing has been done, or maybe even before processing, we will have a local out for get data. So get data will have your web services, your custom report, anything, or if it's an inbound integration, it will read your inbound file. So the get that data will be happening. Then process or transformation data will be happening. And then there will be a store and delivery kind of service. So that's how you usually break main assembly flow into different sub-assemblies.
Also, probably we can use this like a function where, common process multiple times. Those functions can be grouped there.
Yeah, right. That's one of the things, like even if it's tied together, that can happen. But the thing is, for reusability, as you said, that's a good thing. Like say if you're calling a custom report, okay? So for custom report, if you're calling you, and maybe later on also you need to create or call some custom report, you can use that part of the system sub-assembly, because calling a custom report will have similar components like a Workday outrest, maybe reading the XML or onto a variable, writing the XML onto a variable. These 2-3 components are like really common. So yes, reusability is also one of the things that you can do when you break the assembly flow into sub-assemblies. Okay, so we were on transport. So I was supposed to just show you transport, but we went ahead and saw how this actually works, like what it means, like in transport, out transport. But yes, other than in and out, like just Workday in and out, we also have different transports. In we just have Workday in and local in. So Workday in is like the start here component where the main assembly flow starts always. And but in out transport, there are a lot of other transports as well. One is Workday Outpress, one is Workday Outscope. Outpress is something we use to call custom reports to your assembly. So if you have created a custom report and that needs to be used or consumed within the Studio integration, this is the component which helps you do that. Workday Outscope is something that is used to call web. Okay, so any kind of Workday web services you are using, you will be able to call it from Workday. So local out we have already seen. HTTP out to connect to the HTTP endpoint, any kind of endpoint, be it a third-party vendor endpoint, yeah, where you really directly want to send data or something. That is there, and again, SFTP out would be doing the same thing, like delivering the data through an SFTP. Custom out, I think this is very rarely used, but this has the capability to call or use custom objects within Workday. So you can create certain custom objects and call them with this custom out. Email out is sending emails or sending data through an email to via an email to the third party or internal email ID. So, but the most commonly or widely used, I can tell you, is outrest, where you use a custom report out scope and HTTP. And local out is like, of course, like within assembly processing, that is very widely used. So these three are like top four are most widely used in your.
Don't we have SFTP in?
SFTP in, no, we do not have. So, but we do have something as under the services, which we will see. So why I'm saying we also do not use SFTP out is like we do it on the tenant level. Yeah, because what we do is like we have the same kind of setup like a retrieval or a delivery for the integration, and we configure then the SFTP configurations on the tenant. And how we get it on the tenant is like start here is something I will tell you, but yes, as soon as the question arises, it's a good time to show you because that's where you will be able to understand more. So when if you click in on start here, right, so then it will have a lot of properties under it or tabs under it. So there would be common. Common would be just like the name of the start here or ID. Advanced would be the name of the integration system. So this can with this tab you can change the name of the integration system. It will have the launch parameters. So these are the launch parameters when you are going to launch this integration, be it through Studio or usually through a UI or Workday tenant. You will be seeing this when you launch this integration. Okay. And then there are services. So services is something that really very critical because there are a lot of services that you can enable and use. One is create attribute map service. Okay. The other is create delivery service. So this is where you can create a delivery service. As soon as you enable this, save this and deploy it to Workday tenant, you can configure a delivery for your integration. Okay. Otherwise, you can also do what we usually do, create a BP for the integration. And on the BP itself, you configure the delivery or retrieval. So that's the most common way of doing it. And that's because in that case, we again do not have to touch everything inside Workday Studio. So like it's more kind of maintainable. Because if there is something happening with the SFTP or that arises on the delivery or the retrieval, you do not need to go into Studio and make some changes. You directly go to the business process of the integration event and do the configuration on the tenant test. Okay, so that's why we prefer not to have that delivery like or from the integration, but directly on the BP. Then we have a listener kind of service that's also used at some instances. We have retrieval service, again, like delivery. We have sequence generator service. So this is crucial when we create files and we want to give a sequence generated value to the file name. Yes.
So what is the purpose of listener service?
I think for listener service, I have also very rarely used, but this is something to get certain kind of data into your integration system. You know, into your integration system to add certain kind of values or incoming data that is going to be inputted into your tenant. That's where we use.
It is like inbound.
Yes, for inbound.
What is also exact the purpose of the listener service? Because I mean, this is also like inbound.
I think one second. I can tell you listener. What is this listener? I think for listener, it's mostly the listener service name after you deploy integration on the cloud. Assembly runtime adds the listener service as a custom service integration. So to be honest, I've not used it very often, but what I can assume or like tell you from what I've read about is it usually helps you get certain kind of web service data, or when you are sending or launching an integration through a web service call. This is the listener service that helps you do that, like any kind of in transport that is happening into your integration that helps you listen this and like capture that transport.
So can we get a real time example, like not now, but like in future classes, like about the listener service?
I will check if it is under the course curriculum. If listener service is covered, I will do. Otherwise, I will try to get certain assembly that's available where we are using this, or a use case where we are using. I can at least show you how we configure this component, because getting the listener service, like configuring it, is if it is requires certain kind of web service in or a web service call request from outside, that is not possible because we do not have all the resources available to us. But how to configure in the assembly, I can show you later on.
Sure. Thank you.
So I think attribute map service, this is, I think we have already covered. I'm just showing it, but in detail, like we will go through this when the content is also showing the same thing. So I was just showing you how we are doing different kind of things in services. Okay, or maybe I think this came up from the question from Prabhu, where we were configuring SFTP. So yes, so for maps, we have integrations, attributes, and maps. So attributes are nothing like similar to what we already saw right on the other integrations, be it a core connector or I think we have seen a core connector only. So on the core connector, we have these integration attributes. Similarly, you can create certain kind of attributes in here. If you create a simple type attribute, you can create a reference type attribute, and you can create an enumeration. So what is a reference kind of attribute? Which is like a selectable value from the values that exist in the tenant. Simple kind is a text kind of attribute that say you want to create an attribute ABC and you want to use it in throughout your integration. You can do that, and integration maps are nothing but a similar kind of setup that is available for you to set up maps within, like we shared maps for core connector workers like marital status, gender. Similarly, you can set up maps for your studio integrations as well. Okay, so that
Integration attributes are something like a global variable, kind of variable, right?
global variable, yes, for particular
or
integration.
local, global or local.
It is global for your integration. Like throughout this assembly, you can use those, yeah, but not outside of this integration.
Okay. So does Studio has the scope for variables, or it is just global always?
Local variables, I think.
No, when I say scope, is there is any if a variable can be accessed within only specific module within the cloud? Say, for example, here you say hello log hello, right? So if I have a variable there which will not be accessible in the process accessibility, I'm just asking, or
No,
will
I
a
think
variable always be global?
it will always be global as soon as you declare it an eval, right? It
Okay.
will always be global. I will show you. This is called an eval. And this is where you declare any parameters or properties or variables you have. So you have expressions. You declare anything like, say, props. Within props, you say like this. You declare this properties. So props is like properties ABC. And then say you want to declare that LP dot get system, something kind of like any statement can come after this. And this ABC, props ABC, you can use it throughout your assembly. A local variable would be, say, something if you're writing in an accessibility, and within the accessibility, if you're declaring it, as we saw We can declare variables within the XSLT as well, right? So that would be a local variable.
For the XSLT, you cannot access within the studio.
Outside. Yeah, you cannot, unless until you output it on the XSLT output, you cannot access within the.
Right.
Okay. So we were on different kinds of in and out transports have been completed. We'll come back to the services and launch parameters in detail later on. Okay. Then we have mediation components. They allow messages to be manipulated and transmitted. Mediation components include sync mediation, async mediation, splitter, aggregator, router, error handler, and common components are pre-packaged subassembly components delivered by Workday that you can use when developing Workday integration. So with that term, it means it's like there are certain components, and most of the components, not just certain components, but most of the components are pre-packaged. Like a splitter, you will have its properties or things already being configured. You just have to select a certain kind of things available to it, like how to route a file, how to route a different kind of XML stream coming in. You do not have to write it from scratch. That's why we say it's a pre-configured subassembly component. Okay, coming to, we have sync async, splitter, aggregator, router, error handler. Sync async, splitter, router. Okay, so coming to one by one to each of these components. So this is one we have already used. So async mediation, in terms of async, what it does is like it can hold, and it is one of the most widely used components, because any kind of processing which you want to do, say you want to add an XSLT, you want to declare some properties, you want to have a cloud log or a log, you want to have a store again like this. Is also async mediation. So as soon as you click on it, you say on the title tab under the properties, it says this is async mediation. So there are different kind of operations you can do in here, and if you click inside this, you see you can add an eval. Then you have an XSLT plus, then another XSLT, simple XSLT, and I think this is write component. Yes, on the write component, you can write web services or maybe create some XML requests. This is copy. You can copy the message coming out of your particular component. Say after a RAS report call, you can copy the XML, and maybe you want to do different processing parallelly or in two different components. So you copy this into a variable, and then you use the same variable or the same XML output from the report for processing into different components. So that's where you use copy. Going ahead, we have log. So log is something similar to this, which we saw that we can build, we can log something output from a RAS report or output from a web service XML, or even see the properties. If I want to see the properties of the prop we have declared, I can write a component in here. Like I can move this, and after this in the in the message builder, I can have create text, and in this text, I can declare the same component and get its value, like what it is printing before moving ahead. So that can be done. So any kind of internal processing or debugging you want to do, that can be done through log. Then we have a store component. Store helps you store output file on the integration event. So like what you see on an AIV or a core connector, there is a section called as output files or output, and then there are files that you can download or see. So now within the studio integration, you can do the same thing. Store your output files under the output tab using a store component. And then we have a ETV. ETV similar to what we have, ETV processing capabilities, and then we have XTT to text, XML to text. So this is XML to text. Like if you want to
just
directly
like core connector.
Sorry?
Is it like just like core connector?
Exactly. Yes.
And I have a question. Like, so core connector and studio can be a combination of entire integration.
Yes.
Okay. And EIB and also like a studio.
Anything. With studio, you can do anything. That's the flexibility.
Okay.
It depends upon your use case. If it is required, you can do. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So like we had ETV and XTT, right? So you can have those kind of similar kind of processing capabilities which you have with core connector DT. to be specific, under the D, you had those XSLT attributes of DT and XTT. You can do that. In XSLT DT, you remember we were converting or writing something directly coming from an XML output of the report to a text. So that is also available directly to you. There is the component called as XML to text. You can directly write the same kind of thing by just configuring these. I would say this component, if there is an XML output, you give it the input, or give the SA output type in here, and then it will write the output or transform the output into a text rather than XML. Okay, so that completes, I believe, all of the properties available to you within an async mediation. So these are all like around 6, 7, 8, 9, around 9 different, I would say, components within an async mediation that you can use and configure in a async mediation. Okay, moving to a sync mediation, what it does is like async mediation is a unidirectional flow or a unidirectional component. But a sync mediation is a bidirectional. So it will take you or do the same thing. You can add anything here, like similarly. Okay, I'm just dragging and dropping. You can have all these components in a sync mediation as well. But what a sync mediation does is like it's a bidirectional flow. After all the processing has been done, there can be components that will connect you. I will break this link just to show you again. So you can have this link in here. Route to this. So after the XSLT or the XTT step, it will go to the call sub route, process XSLT. It will not directly go to the below part of the sync mediation. After all the processes have been completed, okay, say these have been completed and there are further more steps after this, the processing will have to return to the sync mediation, because from the initial or the out step, we had configured certain, and since it's a bidirectional flow, it will come back to the sync mediation. And in general purpose, if I'll tell you how we use it, so what we do is like on the sync mediation, instead of creating a different kind of async again, or maybe if you want to do certain other processings as well, you can create a store in here. So because the store file is usually the last component after all your processing and the output has been created, you do a store at the end of the integration. So what you can do is like instead of creating a sync again for the store, you usually create a sync mediation in the beginning, and the last or the final output are stored or brought back here. So after all the processing that would have been done, different components or sub-assemblies have been called, it will come back to the sync mediation. It will store your file using the final part of the sync mediation. Okay? So one of the key things to remember is like sync between sync and async is like async is a unidirectional flow, or sync is a bidirectional flow. It will send data out as well as it will, after processing, it will get the data inside the sync mediation again. And then in your studio integrations or studio interviews, this is one of the key things they can ask you, like what are the differences, or how they differentiate between, how can you differentiate between a sync or async mediation.
So you in sync, I see a eval, XSLT, and there is one more. So how do we know from where it will come to? See, there is an arrow which comes to local out, correct? In sync.
Right.
So how do I know after which step it comes to local out and perform the next step? And how do I know it goes back to the store?
Yeah. Anything you have configured on the first part, right? So just consider this something like
the first
this.
part.
Okay. So the above part will always take you out. Okay. And after all the processing has been done, so your call local out has been completed. Okay. So, and whenever there is a local out, the processing will happen on the local in, and it will always bring you back on the local out, right? So your processing will come back on this initial step or where it started, and once XSLT or like all the processing has been done, or all sub-assemblies have been taken care of, what it will do is like after this, it will enter the down part.
Down
So
part.
it will come back to this async mediation here, and from there it will go to the store. So the store will happen after all these. Like for our instance, all this calls the routine, say hello, everything has been done, it will come back here.
Okay. So in asynchronous, we don't have two parts.
Right.
Just
We do
one
not have. It's just one directional. You just do all the processing which has been enabled into the sync mediation, and you move ahead. You do not come back to sync mediation, to this mediation or this component again.
Thank you.
Okay. So then splitter, aggregator, I think I will show you on the later parts when we do, because that would be a better way to understand splitter, aggregator, and route. So these are some things usually used for splitting or like processing your XSLTs. In most cases, at least splitter and aggregator, route is being used to, in most cases, to iterate your input file. Say you have multiple input files coming in from a core connector, then from any other integration, or from since if it is an inbound integration, there are like 3 to 4 files you are getting in directly into your integration. So route helps you process them one by iterating each of the files. So that's the capability for splitter and aggregator. With the name, you can see they are used most commonly or widely for processing XML information. Splitter is something like, if you remember, we were doing an XSL for each to process each of the workers, right? Within this, I'll show you. We are doing that for each of the workers, for each of the report entry I want to process. So within your report output, report data, we have report entry. So Splitter does the same thing. Any of the components I'll give you, I'll like mark the component as report entry. It will split your XML output in terms of that component you mentioned, like for our case report entry. It will split your XML, incoming XML, into different parts of report entry, so that you are able to process it one by one. Okay. So say you want to, after the splitter, you want to save a worker ID into a prop for each of the workers. You can do that. Maybe you can create a map. So that is possible. An aggregator is just the opposite. Like if you have or splitted output of the XML and you want to collate them, then aggregator is used. Okay. So coming to the next slide, we have, not sure if it was visible to you or not. So yeah. Using basic navigation, using the assembly editor, you can graphically build up your assembly by adding or linking transport, mediations, and steps together to define your integration. There are two representations of an assembly. The first is a graphical representation of the underlying assembly.xml file. This is displayed on the default design tab. A source tab also exists and displays the actual assembly XML. You should add and configure assembly components using the editor and not by directly modifying component XML within the source tab. So this talks about the thing we have already covered, that this is a graphical representation of the components, and like how a component is there and the links between each component has been established. But we also have a source tab which will show you the XML, the underlying XML for each of these components and the entire assembly. So since it's a drag and drop kind of configuration and you do not have to write a lot of code in it in our studio assemblies, so what we do is like we use this drag and drop, and instead rather we do not ever write any code directly on the studio assemblies. What we can do is like, say if you want to add anything, you drag it from the palette on the left, add it to your assembly and configure it. This is just for your reference that there is a source code underlying this whole graphical representation as well. But you do not go ahead and change anything directly to the code. Okay, going ahead, the tools palette, which is located on the left hand side, is the main editor view. Within the workspace, displays tools for adding assembly components. Add components to the assembly diagram by dragging them over from the palette over an icon to get more information. I think the palette group components, a number of categories. I think we have already talked about transport, components, mediation, error handler. So this is a diagram of properties. Each component has properties that are configurable. Right click component in the assembly diagram to show property view. And so this is the same property view which we are seeing for each of the components as we discussed. Added the property view under like at the bottom of my screen. It's already showing you. Okay. Then saying about the same things like within the properties you can do different kind of configuration based upon the component you have selected. Edit its properties and its property view. Mediation component has properties. Wiring components. Sorry, the message arrives into assembly. When in transport, the path it takes through the assembly is defined by connectors between transport and message consuming components, such as mediations and routers. Components are wired or connected to one another using connection handle. The messages output from each component becomes the input to the component it is connected to. Yeah. So it's saying like anything on here which is going out would be then output of the start here component, but the same thing would be input. Anything which is going out of the start here would be an input for the etching. So in the direction of the arrow which would be highlighted, right? So the flow will happen in the same direction. It will not never happen in the backwards direction. So after start here, you will always have async in our instance for this. And then again, in the async, you see different arrows within it. So first it will go to log, then it will go to cloud log, then it will go to store. And if there are no connections after this, the assembly flow will stop. And if there are connections, if the call subroutine would have been connected, it would have gone there. Since it's the local out, it will go to its local in called as process accessibility. It will do the processing and come back to the local out. And after local out, since it will see that I've already called and processed the information and have the output on my local out, it will go to the next component that is wired saying say hello. Deploying to Workday once the assembly is complete and say you can deploy it to Workday. To deploy, right click. Talk about launching an integration in Studio. You can launch an integration in Studio from the Cloud Explorer, expand the sandbox. Here, right click on the launch integration. That is doable, but I would suggest you do it and more widely on the tenant. These are certain capabilities that are mentioned. We will definitely do this work while launching the integration and seeing it through the tenant as well. But just for your information, this has been provided. It's more convenient and easy to get the output and view everything on that tenant itself rather than having to go here and run the integration of the studio. Okay, but I'll show you the demo for that. Going to wiring, deploying. Okay, till deploying we have covered. So let me see if I can maybe call subroutine. I will not deploy this, create a studio for you guys from scratch and work the assembly project. Next.
If we want to bring the accessibilities like from my local machine to RDP, can we do that like from the oxygen accessibilities?
I don't think, maybe you check with support team if you can copy something from your local machine to your RDP. If they have permitted, they have allowed that thing, but I'm not sure about how they have set up the RDPs or if we can copy something or not. Check with the support team on that. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so first component, what should be the first component, guys, for my
Workday in.
start here is always called as Workday in, because if you'll go and try to search for, you can search for palettes as well. That's one of the key things I could have told you. So there's something you can do instead of like if you're able to go in here, the course content does not say about it, but these are like certain handy tricks when you start working. These components would have been closed and you're not able to find, under which in the initial days you're not able to find. So what you can do is like just click on the search bar and say Workday in, or type the Workday in, anything with the Workday name. No, it's coming. So this is a very effective way of looking for components. Okay, so we have start here. Okay, so under the services, what I want to do is like create custom report service and go report service RS. Under this, I will add a report preference. Higher on the what I'm doing. So this is how you declare. You created a custom report service under the service. And what I'm trying to do is show you how to call, say, a custom report into your assembly, okay? So this is a basic assembly I want to create, and I'll show you how to deploy with this example. So you also learn the custom report service along with it. So you go into under the services, there is the R option, R button, right? So you create a report service. You give that report service a name. You give that report. Now within the report service, you can have multiple reports being added. Only one service needs to be configured, but all other things, like all the reports that you are going custom reports that you are going to use within this integration, you can configure under the same report service. Okay. So first you will give an alias for the custom report so that you do not go ahead and use the whole name again and again. And from a report reference, under the report reference, you have it available here. One is to delete, one is to clear this report reference. And then you see a small pointer kind of thing available to you. Okay. So as soon as you click it, there's a dialog box that opens or a window that opens. You need to go to the tenant you have configured or enabled your integration for your studio for, and then just this is keyword kind of search. You give a keyword, I want to look for any kind of report services that are available. So you saw yesterday new hire summary was something which is available to you. So I will be using that. So now that report service has been enabled.
So which means the report will run when the integration starts.
Right.
That particular
Right. So like now you have used the report service. Like as soon as I use a component to call that report, it will be able to call. Because otherwise, if you'll call directly, how will it know to like which report to call? So first you need to have the report being added to your report service, and then things.
So this has to be only report or custom reports?
Yeah, custom reports I'm talking
Only
about.
custom
Standard reports you cannot. Like custom reports which are web service enabled, like RAS reports, as we call it.
Right. Okay. Web services enabled. Okay. Also,
Yeah. Tell me.
my question is it only custom report you can call here, or can I call a core connector or EAB in this
Code
place?
connector in no. You cannot call. If you want to do like get the output of a EIB or code connector, you will have to do a PP level setup. First, you trigger your CCW, okay, and the next step, like I showed you how to configure a DT, you configure a Studio assembly. Okay, so what it will do is like Studio, since Studio is after the core connector processing has been done, that same thing or the output of the CCW then can be consumed into the studio.
Okay. So is it same with the EAB too?
Yes,
But
same thing.
EAB, we don't have a BP, correct?
EIB, you do not have a BP in idle cases, but you can create. Like I think someone asked me that if we can create, I said like on use cases, if you see, I have also never created a BP for an EIB because EIB is just for simple processing. So why do you want to create an EIB and then use it in your what you call studio when you can rather directly use, because EIB operates on two things, right? One is custom report as well as web service operation. Those two things you can directly get it done in your studio. So that's why you never use an EIB in conjunction with a.
Oh, you're saying the web services which we use in EAB can be directly used here.
Right. Web service or custom report is the data source, right? Like in the get data, we have these two options to you.
Yeah.
You can use a custom report which is web service enabled or a web service directly. And these two things we can directly use in here. So that's why we do not. But in terms of you asking me that it is possible, yes, that is possible. But we do not.
In that case, we create a BP, we configure those ABCD steps, but it is not inside an EIB configuration, correct? If I'm right, I don't exactly remember.
Yeah, I think there would be another tab. There would be another tab that would be created under EIB. Like similarly, you have for any kind of integration else.
Okay.
You have a tab under the attributes. On the right side of the attributes, you have a business process tab. Okay.
And can we like add the core connector output here in the studio, like after like I just want to see how it works and all.
I think I will see what all assemblies we have in samples, to be honest, because there can be a multiple use cases. I can see whatever the code content has, like in terms of the demos we want to show. I think if it is that is there. Otherwise, I can tell you instead of just configuring, because that will save a lot of time. What we do is like, as I told you, we create a BP for the core connector, we process the core connector, and after the processing has been done, we create a integration step. And once the integration step has been completed, you can configure the studio integration. Okay. And then we
So
have
you created core connector. So and then what is the connection between like core connector? In the core connector itself, like BP we will create.
right.
So right. So entire core connector and what is the connection between two? Is there any separate-
BP is the connection that establishes the connection, right? If you go back and see my videos on core connector, the way we configured a studio and DT integration, similarly, the same way we configure a studio integration as well.
Okay.
Instead of the DT configuration, we just configure the studio. Like studio you would have created and deployed in advance. What you do is like just configure or connect these two. And in order, if you want to ask me like how to get the output into the studio, that is a thing I think you should be looking for. That okay, I have connected everything. BP is a very simple kind of configuration. But how I can get the output, because there are multiple files that are generated. So there is a component called get event documents. Okay. So okay, if I'll go on select all and finish. So this is the component that gets your properties like your event from any of these integration events that have already happened before the studio being launched. So if you want to say connect any integration before the studio or process the output of a particular integration within the studio, you get the output files of that particular event to get event document. So what it says on the properties, it has these execute when endpoint. You do not really have to do any changes into it. The properties itself, it always have all that integration documents available to you. So as soon as you use this in your assembly, like after the start here only, you just want to directly get the CCW output. So you get the get event. Now this will get you all the files. So whatever the output.xml or a sequence generated value name you have given, that file now will be available to you, and you can use or consume that file in your processing. Now it will be available in the messages, and from there on you can use it to process the message accordingly. Okay. So
Sure.
main component for you to look for is get event documents. By the name itself, it says it will get all the documents from the integration event that has been completed before this. Okay.
And also,
So
like codes you are using in the properties, like LP dot something. I observed in the event document, the one which you deleted now. So in that, there is a property, and so LP is set and all. So do we have any kind of if we do any customization, do we need to get these properties somewhere in so that we can go through it
I'm not
so
understanding. To be specific, you're saying this thing.
yeah.
So this is already configured to you. So as soon as I say second, I will delete. So similarly, since as we say that these are pre-configured, that's where we see these things. If I do not enable this, right? Okay, it's not available. Now that property or parameter in particular is not available. So that's why we say this is a pre-configured, because these components are part of pre-configured assembly. So they already have these things that are that's why they are used for like what are the applications they already have this. So it's saying lp.set. So in the Workday event, it's saying lp.set and lp.get integration event with. So what it will do is like from the launch parameter itself, like as soon as you launch the integration, there are certain properties that get enabled internally, and with that it is directly getting your integration with. So your integration with is nothing but the link of the integration event. So something, if I'll one second, if we go to a integration event, it will directly get that integration event with the with. So that's the property it directly calls. It's not doing anything other than that. So if you want to do certain properties, that depends upon the type of operation you're doing, and there are a lot of possibilities that you can do. If you have knowledge of Java and you want to do, say, a custom kind of thing more than this, what it is already being done, you can do. We have this possibilities of adding parameters in here and doing everything. But those are advanced concepts. And for the purpose of this course, we are just going through our particular simple concepts that we are using this. This is how it can be used. And the advanced concepts are the more customization you can do as you learn this Workday Studio integration, and then the knowledge of Java operations or libraries or functions, how you call it, because this is kind of similar syntax that you can be used. Yeah, you would be seeing used in Java language.
So do we get those libraries available in the studio somewhere? Like,
No, if you want to see the list, no, it is not available in somewhere.
Yeah. So like it's from the non-technical background, it is kind of
No.
like
Yeah,
difficult.
that's why, because 90%, 95% of the times you do not need all those things. You just need simple components to be configured. Those are like very rare or complex scenarios that you might need to configure any of the other properties other than that has been already configured on the component that has been pre-built. So for
Yeah.
non-tech background, yes, you do not. That's why it's good to stick with the basics, know what we can do, because 95% of the tasks you can do maybe within using the different components. Maybe something you want to do, but you do and you want to create a custom thing. But there might be a component already available for the same purpose. So you just should be aware about the components that are already existing. Okay.
So the one you just deleted, right? So that triggers immediately. You need a connection, or it triggers
Right.
automatically after the start here.
No, you will connect this mostly connect this
Okay.
after the start here. Okay.
So it is not that it can be configured anywhere in the assembly.
Right. It can be configured like whenever you want to get the output of the a particular event, integration event into your studio, you call that component. Okay.
But that is that is only which is executed outside the studio.
Yes. So that will get executed. No, even Workday outrest, this will get executed outside of studio. It will go ahead and call that custom report like you call it in real time, right? It will call it in the background and get the output in your studio.
Yeah, but my question is, if you use this one, you don't need the other one, correct?
Right. More like, I think the other one, if you're saying, that depends. If you're calling a custom report, it does not call with the integration event.
Within the integration. Okay.
Right. Okay, now coming back to our example, I will at least try to complete this assembly. Okay, so we had that service configured. I had this custom report named and added in a row, right? And then we have this Workday outrest. So what Workday outrest does is like helps us call that custom report. Okay. And then we have that hire. Okay. So what I did is like, since we have already declared the service, right, and created an alias for the custom report we want to call, you see hire summary. Okay. So if I'll clear this, say I'll clear again.
Oh, that's the. Oh, I thought when you create the alias, I thought it will execute there. No, it won't execute there. It will execute in the next step. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I said when you said that it will be kind of declared in here if you see in terms of a language perspective. Now the property is being declared in here, but how you call or the function has been declared in here. And how you call the function, you call the function using the particular component. Okay. And as soon as you click on this, you see now the report alias is already available.
It's available. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If I do not configure it, it will not be available here.
Right.
Okay. And this is the syntax. And now you will say, I think whoever was asking certain questions, right? How do we know the syntax? I will say that no, I don't want to configure in the initial step. I just want to write the properties in here. So this is something which is there. And as with the experience, I can write this directly, that instance.report service.extra path, and then within the columns, it will have the report alias. I can have this here, but in case if you want to do it directly, then you'll have to get more experience, and then only you can do it. At this stage, you do not have, like, since this is a very closed or confined kind of thing, Workday things are not really available to you to read and just to learn. Okay, so as soon as save this. This is getting in here, and say I want to get a log. Okay. I will just simply get message content is already there. Okay. On out. Save this. I do a line separator between the so that I'm able to identify. Okay. So what we are doing here, this is a very simple assembly. We're just calling the custom report and writing the log. Like this is the initial, I would say, initial assembly where you want to process any kind of information through a custom report. The processing will start in here after the log, but this is where you can see how the integration is getting all the XML from the custom report. So what I'll do is like go ahead and deploy to Workday. Say hello cloud, you can say whatever you want. I have connected to this. I will include, if you remember, I said always include source code and deployed clar, otherwise it will error out. And then I'll click on connect. I will say, so this is the left hand side of the screen or the deployment screen will have all the projects that are available to you. It will also have hello cloud, right? But the configured, the one you want to deploy will be on the right. If I'll click on, it will ask me to agree on certain things. Now you keep your eye on the right hand side. First it said deploying and now it says deployed. Okay. Now what I want to go do is go in there and search for the studio integration. What is the name of the studio integration? So this is the integration that has already been configured now as soon as we deploy here. Okay. So you see integration services, integration attributes. These are all the default things that already get developed. I have only configured one particular service for you for this purpose, for this integration. And if I'll go ahead and try to see the integration service, you see that report description and the report configuration has also been done. You can do it UI itself also. Like say now this report is something already being used by another integration, but you just configure to get the properties right, and then you want to create a copy of it and do certain changes into the report and then use that report. So what you'll do is you go to the report service, you edit report service, you can edit the report service in here, and in the report configuration, I think the other option was there. You go to this and you do configure integration reports. So from here you can configure any report of your choice which are available to you, that you have access to. All the RAS reports, like reports which are web service enabled, that can be configured in here. Okay, so going back to the integration, now I will do a launch. So it is now you'll see all the things similar to what we have. So since we do not have any launch parameters as of now, it will just directly launch. It's completed. Since we did not had an output file, we have a log file created. So to get the log files, to create, click on consolidated reports and log files. You go to the server log. Okay, this will get open on a notepad, and you see our log. So these are the initial information, because the log file is a server log. It will have certain information even before you have already written something. It will already have the default information, but now the information that you wrote is in here, report output, and then you had a line break. The line broke and it went to the next line. And if you remember, this is how a report output would look like. See, that report does not had any kind of put. That's why it did not came up with one. But if I delete this and create your copy, and so this is the same structure of a report. So if you'll have a report output in there, the same report output can be seen. So now you know that our custom report output is getting into your studio, and all you need to do is within the studio, if you want to do XSLT kind of processing, you will add XSLT component. What we were doing in here, creating XSLT, you can create an XSLT here or directly write on the XSLT component. Okay. And then as soon as you use this XSLT, it will do the same kind of processing of data you did using an XML like Oxygen or a CCWDT. This whole processing will be done as soon as you add in here, right? A plus R1. Yeah, usually use XSLT plus. I think XSLT was an initial component to be used, but nowadays we use XSLT plus only. And then you have this XSLT to be created. So for the first time, if you're creating this XSLT, what you do is like create XSLT file. Say I will name it to anything like trans.xml. Okay, create. So now it gets created. So this is the Studio integration XLC. Now this particular component will have a transform.xsl. It will not be empty because you have created, and now you can copy and paste your XSLT logic in here. It is to do auto-generated template. So this is now within this template, you can write the whole logic you want to perform on your transform on your X.
So you can configure the inbound file as well here. Is that the input?
Inbound file as in for?
If in the XSLT, if I'm planning to use consume an inbound file and do some transformation, where do you configure that inbound file? Which
You
probably
configure,
create from there.
you will create from the get events document. So you say if it is an output from an XML like a CCW, right? So I will do in here. Okay. I will, for the purpose for this demo, I will remove this. I will from the start here, I'll call the get event document. Okay. And I will do this here.
So is it implicit that whatever file which is created in the previous step will be consumed by the XSLT?
Yes, it will get the deliverable document. You remember on the output file, like useful to you will have a deliverable tag. It will get the deliverable document to your studio. And now what you can do is like, usually what you do is just for your reference, you can use a write component. Okay. And then write the input. You see the input message. So input would be the message, say the message on the output file. Maybe that's an XML. You can store it in a variable or anything. Declare a variable and then use it for any of the processing as well. So, but yes, to your question, this is how you get a file inside your studio, and then you can use that file to be worked upon for a transformation using an XSLT.
But this looks like limitation, right? Say I need to get an event, run a custom report, and probably I need to do multiple more steps. Then after fifth step or sixth step, I need to call my XSLT. So how do you reference that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So if you want to do a custom report, if you want to call the custom report, we will do the same thing. We will go back and 1 second.
No, but my question is, you call custom report, not just one, probably two custom reports, and you do some other activity, right?
Right.
And after that, you write your XSLT. So
that's possible. You do not have to write this.
Link will not be directly there, right? My point.
No. What you do is like you write your XSLT. What you're saying, like you want to have multiple XSLTs, right? So what you do is like.
No, that's not the question. Let me ask you again. So you have this Workday out rest. What this is going to do, it's going to call a custom report and an output will be created. And if I configure a XSLT immediately after that, you say that XSLT will directly take that outbound file from the previous step. That is fine.
Exactly.
Right. My question is, you do a Workday out rest, right? It creates a file, and then you do subsequent another XYZ steps. I don't know what it is. It could be anything. Right. Then you need to call XSLT. So now, how does this XSLT know that I need to use that file which is created 3 steps before?
That's what I'm saying. I got your question right. So what you do is like, this is your input step. Your route, write the output in a variable. Okay. Say you say it, store it with some kind of variable that WD. I think by default the variable is WD.retrieval or something. Okay. So you will declare that variable in here, say XYZ.
So that variable will have the output file.
This will store the output file for you. Okay. So this will store the output file for you. And once you are again, say, I will say 1 second.
Wherever I need to use the XSLT, there I can give the inbound.
Right. Now you want to use XSLT in here, say 8 steps, 10 steps, 15 steps, anything.
Right.
Okay.
I got the point
here.
now.
Yeah. You go in here, you call the XSLT component. Then in the input variable, and then you use the variable name.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I think what we saw is like a simple demo of the integration, how to call a custom report and write it on a log file. So I hope till this point we are clear. I will session at this point and will all say that yes, please go back, do this hands-on, try to do the same thing, because writing a log is one of the crucial things when you are initially developing a studio integration, because you will not know. You will say like, oh, this is a black box. I do not know what is happening inside. So log is something that helps you. Be it a variable, be it a property, any kind of thing that you want to see what this variable or this prop or this eval expression is printing. I want to see. The only way to do is like write it on a log. So please go ahead and write it on the log.
How many types of logs we have for the studio? Because like we need to debug at some point, like we got any issues and all.
For debugging, you always use this log, normal log, but there is another thing called as cloud log, which is being used. I will tell you later. That is used for outputting the log file in a different manner. So that is mostly used to for the end user kind of purposes. But for you, for debugging as a developer, always use a normal log file because it is more efficient. It will take lesser time. So you can number of log files as you want.
So whatever the, like, suppose like it error or something, due to some processing issue or something,
Right.
any kind of issue. So it's gonna print everything in log file. Okay.
Right. Any of the message component. So the assembly flows happens in terms of a message component. Okay. So say here we had used one second. I think did we saved it? That's why. Okay. Otherwise, I will just create a log again. So what we did is like delete this. Okay. So I wrote on the log file a text kind of thing, and then say this is what I did, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what it is doing is like I have given only a text kind of which was printing. I would say for my customization, it was printing only this part. Okay. Anything after
And
it,
also
which
like
is a message.
in this
Can you please let me complete?
Yeah.
At least when I'm saying so. That's where we deviate from topic. So once
Okay.
I'm writing a text, okay, then I have a message content after it. So what is this message content? It is holding the output of the report. So that's where anything you have on the message content, and message content is the, I would say, the transportation part that holds anything that is going from one part of one component to another in the assembly. Yeah, please go ahead now.
So in that, the one which we are seeing, the log file, we wrote like line. I don't remember the line. Just like message content, there is a line spacing. You just added.
Yeah, line separator I added.
Line
Yes.
separator.
Yes, this is not doing anything else than entering it. So if I would have not used a line separator, right, this message content would have started from here. So I'll show you. So this would have started from here, and you would have it would have been very difficult to outright just easily identify where is this XML was starting from. So that's why I gave it as a line separator, so that whenever you find a content like report output, you will be easily able to identify, because it would be at the end of a particular line. And from after that line, there would be a line break, and the next thing would be your message content.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Otherwise, it would have been like in a very this kind of manner.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.